Hey all, Cinephile Mike here, and it is day 52 of Oscar Rewind, my bi-weekly series of video commentary and reviews reflecting the work of this past year's Oscar nominees and winners. I've dug deep into those IMDb profiles, and my hope is that you will discover a new, older favorite, or maybe revisit something you haven't seen in a while. As always, I'll be discussing the recent Oscars connection, awards history for the film, box office information, critical response, and as always, these reviews are spoiler-free. Now, before we jump in, do me a favor, click that subscribe button. You definitely want to be a part of all the cinematic goodness coming your way on the channel, and especially this month where we are looking at the visuals, and our first three films, we are looking at visual effects. So moving along, today I am talking about Universal Pictures' Mortal Engines, with a screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson. Yes, Peter Jackson. Based on the novel of the same name by Philip Reeve and directed by Christian Rivers, an Oscar winner himself for Best Visual Effects for Jackson's King Kong. This film was released in late 2018. Now, unfortunately, despite the prowess behind this, you can see on the poster from the filmmakers of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, this film underperformed at the box office. With a reported budget of somewhere between 100 and 150 million, and that may have just been the production budget, the film made $15,951,040 domestically and an initial $67,721,633 internationally, plus a small $197,145 Australian re-release in 2021, giving the film a current worldwide total of $83,869,818. Critically, the film didn't quite stick the landing either, sitting with a 25% critical rating from 189 reviews and a slightly higher, but still that popcorn bucket that spilled over for the popcorn meter. Over 2,500 audience reviews, the film sits with a 48%. Award season-wise, the film did not break into any of the major awards, but worth noting, it didn't nominate for any Razzies either. And it did pick up a few positive awards, one being Outstanding Model in a Photoreal or Animated Project for London, and I'll get into that, from the Visual Effects Society Awards. It won a Special Merit Award for the visual effects in a feature film from the Australian Effects and Animation Festival, and also the New Zealand Cinematographers Society awarded Matthew Knight and Simon Raby for their work on Mortal Engines. Of everything, many critics and the audience, one thing if you look, the visuals were the strength for this film. And that's why we're here, right? Visual effects. Mortal Engines' visual effects supervisor, Luke Millar, who after working in visual effects for over 15 years, Mortal Engines marked his first supervisor gig, visual effects supervisor gig, and then several years later would receive their first Oscar nomination for being the visual effects supervisor and part of the team that gave us the effects on the rather entertaining Better Man. So, let's talk Mortal Engines. In a dystopian future, society has fallen, and those who remain have elected to live in mobile or traction cities, or non-mobile static civilizations, which are populated with a group known as anti-tractionists. Larger traction cities, also known as predator cities, ingest smaller cities for fuel and resources to keep the bigger predator cities afloat. Meanwhile, the static civilizations try to live a more traditional life. Now, something unique, after civilization failed as a result of the 60-minute war, there is also an appreciation for old tech. What is the old tech? Well, computers, smartphones, toasters, and large predatory cities like London prizes this in a relics museum. If you're wondering what happened to America, well, they refer to it as the dead continent of the Americas. So clearly, America did not survive the 60-minute war. So at the start of the film, we see London, large and foreboding, capture a smaller Bavarian traction city. Led by the Guild of Historians, Thaddeus Valentine, played by Hugo Weaving, they begin to rummage through the Bavarian villages, traction cities, resources, And aiding him is his apprentice, young Tom Natsworthy, played by Robert Sheehan, who is kind of like your nerdy museum geek, kind of that trope that we've seen in many films. Rachel Weisz in The Mummy comes to mind. And while going through and seeing the Bavarian citizens, they're kind of being welcomed into London, even though they've lost their homes. I guess they're moving. There is one woman among them, Hester Shaw, played by Hera Hilmar, who leaps out of the crowd, and this was her moment because she has been trying to get to London to assassinate Valentine. Clearly there's a history there. But Tom intercepts this, chases her off, and before they can kind of figure out what's going on, Hester reveals information to Tom that kind of questions what he knows about Valentine. Hester jumps through a trash chute to escape, although it seems like she has leapt to her death, and Tom, tells Valentine what he learned, and Valentine, believing that this is information that maybe shouldn't be shared, throws Tom off London as well, hoping to be rid of him. But of course, we can't have that in this film, right? It's too early on. So Tom will survive the fall and reluctantly team up with Hester as she shares other information about her past and Valentine, and Tom begins to see that maybe not everything is as it appears to be. And as they are pursued, Tom will find himself teaming up with a group of anti-tractionists led by the wanted felon Anna Fang, played by Ji Hae, to try and save some of the static civilizations which are at risk, because it turns out Valentine is maybe not as heartfelt as he appears to be. Alright, so that was as basic of a plot summary synopsis as I could come up with, and it doesn't even chip away at everything in the story, but I didn't want to give a 15-minute summary. There are several other subplots that I left out, and while a couple of them serve a purpose, some of them not so much. I guess they were trying to shoehorn them in to stay more aligned to the novel. Look, here's the thing. On the surface, this should actually be an entertaining film. Think of it's like a Mad Max, but now set in an even more extreme steampunk society. And you can't help but, get some of the design vibes akin to, as much as the film was tragically disappointing. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it. It's why Sean Connery quit acting. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but they captured that steampunk aesthetic, and that's what we're getting here. The film is very slick looking. And I think my challenge, look, it strived to be more than it could be. I mean, look, Walsh, Boyens, Jackson, they gave us the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films. And visually stunning. And even though those plots were complex, each film was, 2.5 to 3.5 hours, even longer if you had the extended edition. And here they tried to condense this novel into like a roughly 2-hour film. And so I think they bit off more than they could chew. At times, there's so much story going on that you might even find yourself being like, you know what? There's a little too much film going on. I just want to look at the pretty. Because the design elements, the costumes, the production design, the visuals, it's really cool. But should it be so cool that they distract you from the story? No, they should be secondary to story, and that's not what happens. Which is unfortunate, because you have a lot of good talent here. I mean, Hugo Weaving, he chews through the scenery, gives us another great villain. Sheehan, who I absolutely enjoy in the Umbrella Academy, is a very likable protagonist here. Hilmar has a lot of exposition to carry on her shoulders, but she's able to carry the film. Ji Hae, new to me, this singer-performer, dang, they have so much charisma, in the villain role. I almost wanted a movie about Anna Fang. I felt would have even been more engaging, and her group of anti-tractionists. It's just a shame that this cast, either A, didn't have a slightly better script to work with, or B, a more extended format. I wonder if there was a lot of this film that was left on the cutting room floor. I'm not sure. It just, sometimes things got so convoluted, I was like, wait, I had to rewatch a scene, try to get some of the story back. And it's not that it was such a complex story, but there were just so many loose threads that I had to be like, wait, did we resolve that? Yeah, we did. There's even one whole subplot that serves as a plot device with Hester's past from an android named Shrike, voiced by a very enjoyable, I'll take Stephen Lang, another great villain, but it's such a small premise I almost feel like he could have been cut out of this film. They could have come up with a different device for what he plays. I won't spoil it. And then we could have moved. That was 10 minutes that could have been dedicated, somewhere else. And we're not going to get any more films in this franchise. There's not been any talk of them. I mean, there are 4 books in the series. I mean, look, I am almost tempted to go and pick up the books because I feel that this whole steampunk aesthetic, futuristic dystopian society is very interesting that I would like to look at. The design elements, look, they won that prize for London being the big city. It's really very cool. Imagine if they took Big Ben and St. Paul's Cathedral, slapped it on these massively high tank tracks, and you followed it. That's what London is now. I mean, you get those Victorian elements, the steampunk elements. Everything works. And, look, I will tip my hat to the film's director, first-time feature film director, Christian Rivers. I appreciate what he tried to do. I just don't think that it really pulled off. I think maybe he needed a little more experience and a little more backing. This might have been a little bit more than he could have, bit off more than he could chew. Sorry. So look, Mortal Engines, I wanted to go higher, but it's just a 2-star film. It's okay. It's not an awful, atrocious film. I didn't say, why do we have this? It's just not great. Aside from the visuals, it's unfortunate, it's bloated, but look, there are worse things out there. It's a 2-star film. There are some, some that like it a little bit more. 2 stars kind of falls to that 44% audience score. I'm higher than the 25% critical rating. Obviously, your opinion is yours. Mine is mine. If you would like to check this one out, unfortunately, as of this recording and posting, there is no streaming information, but you can purchase it, physical copy, digital rental, digital purchase on most platforms. All right. There we go. Mortal Engines, not quite as strong as Blade Runner 2049 earlier this week, but will it be better or worse than the last visual effects film I'm hitting next week? Well, to find that out, you got to come back, right? As always, if you like what you heard here, please click the subscribe button, like and share the video, spread the word, drop a comment, join the conversation. You can follow me, Cinephile Mike, on all social media platforms and on Letterboxd, and find lots of great additional content on my website, cinephilemike.com. All right. Happy watching, everyone, and until next time, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new.